Unleashed, Riftbound's newest set, has seen about a month of play in China and online, and it's just released in the West. And with us being this early in the game's lifecycle, the release of this newest set means that the pool of playable cards just got bigger by about 30%. So in this video, I want to examine how Riftbound deck building changed with the addition of these new cards on a couple different axes. I'm gonna be looking into the adoption of these new cards by new legends versus older ones, checking if there's a card type, unit gear, battlefield, or spell where Unleashed outperforms the other two sets, and if any of these vary by color. I'll also be discussing the most played cards from the set. I'm Simon from Games Deconstructed, and let's get started. Now, let's talk a little bit about my approach to this project. I pulled the deck lists for all available top 8 decks for 62 early Unleashed tournaments. That's over 500 decks in total. Even though top 8s lean somewhat more competitive, there's a variety of tournament sizes and competition levels in here, so I feel like the variety is going to be alright. There's even a Garen in there somewhere. Our initial observation, which may later meander into discussions of power creep or design success, is to see how many cards were added by each set into the pool of playable cards, and how many of them we actually see in our sample. Origins contributed 251 main deck options to the pool, while Spiritforged and Unleashed added 192 and 194 respectively. I'm not including Legends and Battlefields in those numbers, as first of all they'll get their own sections, but also because they don't really compete for main and side deck slots. And adoption is quite different across these three sets. 84% of Unleashed cards have seen play in at least one deck in the sample, followed by 76.5% for Origins and 74% for Spiritforged. This is to be expected, as this early new set meta is always built around the express purpose, and I dare say necessity, of testing which of the new cards work and which ones don't. This motivates player to include more of them at this stage, even if after testing they end up reverting to a card from an older set that accomplished a similar purpose. But just because a lot of these cards see play somewhere, doesn't mean that Unleashed is the most impactful set. And looking at raw card counts, 47% of the cards in these decks are from Origins, 24% are from Spiritforged, and 28% are from the newest set. This hides behind it a couple of subtleties. First off, we know that some of the legend designs from the new set will incentivize players to include more cards from that set. If you play Azir, that's a Spiritforged example, you will want equipment, and equipment comes from Spiritforged. In the same vein, if you wanna check out Kha'Zix, who's built around XP, you'll need to include at least some cards from Unleashed, as they are the only ones that interact with that set mechanic. And Unleashed Legends are some of the most popular choices in these early days of the meta, taking a 39% slice of the top 8 representation, followed by Spiritforged at 31.5% and Origins at 29.5%. And to spoil the rest of the video a little bit, this is the only category where Origins underperforms. Now, Unleashed Legends see a bit of a wider representation than Unleashed cards overall. And this is understandable. You can use them in these early days of the meta to just helm a deck made of older staples. Just replace the Ezreal in Ezreal tempo with Diana, move a couple of cards around, and you've got a safe deck to explore those early stages of the meta with. And I feel like Diana is a good example here because she's not built around any set-specific mechanic, she just wants to cast spells in combat. So while there is undoubtedly an incentive to test new cards, it applies to legends more so than a random unit or a spell from the new set. Now, to ground these claims a bit, let's look at legend-specific deck building stats. Here's a lovely table showing what percentage of cards from each set are played in a deck led by legends from each set. So this row over here shows us that Origins Legends, 62% cards in their decks are from Origins, 18% from Spiritforged, 19% from Unleashed. For SFG Legends, 43.5% OGN cards, 40% from their own set, 16% from Unleashed. And for our newest set of legends, it's 37% Origins, 16.5% Spirit Forged, and 46.5% Unleashed. Obviously, there's going to be a good deal of variety within each of these groups. Teemo, for example, only plays 45.6% of Origins cards because he needs that card variety provided by the new sets, while something like Kai'Sa is 73% Origins, as the core of her deck has remained stable, with just a couple of cards moving around as new ones get added to the pool. For Spirit Forged and Unleashed, set mechanics legends like Jax or the new XP Master Yi require up to 60% of the cards in their deck to come from their own expansion, while strategies built around a more core aspect of the game, like Sivir or Vex, would play substantially less of these cards. So what cards does Unleashed provide that enjoy widespread popularity? If we look at the types of cards we might include in our main and side decks, where Unleashed makes the biggest splash is units. 35% of units in our decks are Unleashed, 24 Spirit Forged, and 41 Origins. The large unit share is mostly due to, no joke, the popularity of Scuttlecrab, the most popular 2-drop in the game according to our sample, and the second most popular unit overall, just below Thousand-Tailed Watcher. The next couple best units from the set are the more expected fare of bombs like Vex Apathetic, Elder Dragon, Rengar Trophy Hunter, and Ruined Rex, the last one boosted by the popularity of LeBlanc decks in the early format. Now, I know from personal experience that there's a good deal of exciting spells in Unleashed as well. Star-Crossed, Back Off, Sacrifice, Shadow's Call are all cards that I'm keen to include in my decks. But looking at the split of spells by set, I have to respect the absolute chokehold that Origin staples have on this category. 59% of all spells in the format is stuff from Origins with like a single line of text on it. But it happens to be a single line of text that wins games. Genuinely, out of the top 10 most widespread spells in the format, the first 8 are Defy, Discipline, Stacked Deck, Charm, Hidden Blade, Stupefy, Gust, Ride the Wind. And only then do we get Punch First from Spirit Forged and Sacrifice from Unleashed. So yeah, I don't think the new set's gonna touch the dominance of the core spells anytime soon, but it does outperform Spirit Forged slightly on the spells front. For gear, it's not unexpected that the equipment set is going to overperform, so 50% of the gear played is from Spirit Forged. Origins hanging in there thanks to Aurora and Zhonya, actually the most played gear in the game now thanks to the combined popularity of Irelia and Yi, and Unleashed gets a participation prize for Sprite Fountain and Scryer's Bloom, which end up making a slight splash. On the Battlefield's front, it's a decently varied split of 43% Origins, 31% Unleashed, 26% Spirit Forged. And this is a fun distribution behind the scenes because the most popular Battlefield currently comes from the nominally least popular Battlefield set. It's Sunken Temple from Spirit Forged. The next 3 are the most exciting new ones from Unleashed in Abandon Hall, Duskrow's Lab, Starspring, and then that's followed by a list of Origins classics: Trifarian Warcamp, Vilmos Lair, Targon's Peak, Windswept Hillock. Overall, the Battlefield meta is extremely varied right now. Now, one thing that I want to establish is if that Unleashed impact applies to all colors equally. I have an impression of yellow, purple, and perhaps green cards having the biggest impact on my perception of the meta, but let's see if using the data that we have access to, we can remove the "my perception of" part of that sentence. But before we do that, if you're enjoying the video so far, consider subscribing to the channel for more Riftbound content. Thank you very much. Now take a peek at another table, if you will. And interestingly, the color with the highest Unleashed representation happens to be mine, the blue color. After delving a little deeper, seems like the main driver of that is Turn to Dust, being an overwhelmingly popular sideboard inclusion in blue decks and often played as either a 2 or a 3 in those sideboards. The Sprite cards, while not top performers individually, also have a decent cumulative impact. Purple and orange are the immediate next ones, and for Chaos the purple color, highlights include Star-Crossed, Abandon, and Vex Apathetic. Within expectations, I'd say, because they are the most impressive new inclusions in the color, though they are not played as 3-offs in necessarily every single one of these decks, especially so for Abandon. For Body or Orange, it's a mix of a couple unconnected trends. Grim Resolve and Repulse are good staple spells and the most popular inclusions from the new set. Then we've got Elder Dragon, who's a build-around for Aurora decks, nearly always played as a 3-off and pretty much an auto-include if you're playing this style of deck. Finally, Rengar Trophy Hunter is just a premium unit, and Yi Tempered is now the go-to champion for both variants of the Yi legend. Interestingly, despite spells like Sacrifice and Shadow's Call being impressive and quite popular in the color, yellow is kind of middle of the pack in terms of Unleashed card concentration, and this is at least partially so due to Unleashed not introducing that many premium units for Order decks to make use of. LeBlanc, the biggest yellow card deck in the meta, is built around Death Knell synergies, and most of the premium yellow ones, Soaring Scout, Honest Broker, Glass Mixologist, not to mention Karthus, come from other sets. Or, in the case of Ruined Rex, which is another one, are not yellow. Overall, it seems like the newly released Unleashed cards are making an appropriately sized splash in the meta. And I think the data we've just gone over shows that these new decks and the increases in power level that they bring come about as a combination of cards from multiple sets rather than new cards making older ones obsolete. Especially the continued presence of Origin's spell staples is something to keep an eye on, both to see how long it's gonna hold, and because it's going to be interesting once the set finally rotates out of Standard in a couple of years, and we'll have to adjust to no longer having access to those spells. Hope you've enjoyed this in-depth look into Unleashed deck building. Let me know in the comments what your absolute favorite card from the set is. I've been Simon from Games Deconstructed. Thanks a lot for watching, and a special thank you to the Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/gamesdeconstructed, especially Andrew Gross, Ola Brynner, and Dillinger. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.